Hi, friends. I want to deviate from my usual topics a little bit today and talk about exercise. Normally, I like to talk about nature and poetry and mental health, but I'd like to dive into mainstream exercise culture and the ways in which it can be exclusionary to people, can be overly prescriptive in a way that feels unwelcoming. My motivation to do that comes from numerous conversations I've had over my life with wonderful folks who have really internalized the trappings of mainstream exercise culture, and in doing so have found that they don't feel like it's a space that is in any way for them. And I'm talking about your holding up images of a perfect body. I'm talking about attitudes linked to toxic masculinity, sort of the hyper-aggressive, beast mode, weightlifter kind of stuff. And honestly, if your traditional gym bro culture works for you, fine. Then it works for you. But I think where we are falling short culturally is in putting that image of fitness forward as the image, as what exercise is, as the ideal to which we should all strive. It's something objective. It's not. That is in no way an objective ideal to strive for. Some of you may notice that this is the second draft of this video that I've put up. That's because a friend of mine was brave and generous enough to tell me that some of the ideas I put forth in the first video hurt them, struck them as intensely ableist, which really knocked me back on my heels, because that was essentially what I was trying to push back against. The idea that there is one kind of fitness, an exclusionary view of what exercise is. But I unintentionally did it. So, as a writer, I'm used to doing second drafts. So here I'm sitting and trying to make my language more precise to get at what I mean. And first and foremost, what I mean is that fitness is a subjective element, not an objective element. I think fitness is akin to meaning. The project of making meaning throughout your life, I don't believe, results in ever discovering an objective meaning. A capital M meaning, the meaning for everybody. That's not what it's about. It's about finding out what your meaning is, and then changing and refining what you have discovered over a lifetime. It has to be, because our minds, our outlooks, our philosophies, our viewpoints, our life experience, these are all profoundly different. So meaning itself needs to exist within the universe of the individual's mind, because each one of those universes are so profoundly different. Fitness is very similar, I think. I mean, what is fitness? Fit to what? Fit to happily exist within your own life, within your own context. So let me put forth first and foremost that that is, I think, one of the main primary ways mainstream exercise culture falls down, in treating fitness as something that is objective, not subjective. We all see photos of idealized bodies, posters of six-packs, and they're put forth as a finish line, as, here it is, that's what fitness looks like, that's the objective you're shooting for. Just get there and that's it. You did it. But of course, that's not it. That's not what it is. And that approach to talking about, to showing what fitness is, leaves so many people out in the cold. So with that said, I'd like to turn to more of a sharing of a personal nature. So those are what my views of fitness are and how mainstream fitness culture falls down. I want to talk about specifically for me, for my subjective fitness and meaning, what coming to those conclusions and realizations have meant in kind of a practical and philosophical sense. Because I'm telling you that I had the same problem of getting over my kind of unexamined, internalized ideas of what exercise was. Especially as a man, in Midwestern America, for me, it's very much has been throughout my life the idea of suffering. The idea of suffering and aggression and being hardcore in whatever way that means currently. And I was somebody who really loved weightlifting when I was younger. I was in there working toward that 300-pound bench press, and now that I'm older, I really had to shrug off the idea that, well, that was it and that time has passed. Through examining aspects of that I had never examined before, which is nice. I mean, I think that's part of what the journey of life is, right? When we know better, we do better. So let me go through some of my own struggles and tactics, purely in the service of, in sharing my own story, maybe there will be parts of it that are helpful for you, parts that might overlap with your experience. Not because these are the ways to do it. These aren't prescriptive. I am in no way saying that my tactics and my challenges are universal. They're mine. And I'm sharing them in the spirit of sharing. First and foremost for me was rejecting the idea of perfect. It's the same thing that I have to work toward and struggle with constantly in my creative pursuits. The idea that that blank page is unsurmountable because anything I write down is going to be flawed and in being flawed, open to criticism. So that is, of course, a way to talk yourself out of doing anything ever. Because perfect doesn't exist. Because you can fill imaginary mental stadiums with imaginary critics easily. It's an easy thing to do. So setting out with the idea that you are going to do something, to create something, to come to exercise your movement with the explicit purpose that you're going to do it in a flawed, non-optimal way is, I think, for me, the healthiest thing in the world. To absolutely shrug off the six-pack glossy fitness poster and think, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not part of that project. I'm not part of that world. I reject that. That culture, that image, it doesn't own what fitness is. It doesn't own what exercise is or can be. So I think that was a key fundamental for me. Second was, because I'm me, because I'm a nature poet, second was thinking about essentially what the body is, what movement is. A lot of people like to separate the conscious mind from the body. And often I push back against that idea, but let's set up that dichotomy for now. Well, if the conscious mind is who we are and the body is something else, I think one thing we can say for sure is that your conscious mind didn't create your body. You didn't put the pieces together. You know, you didn't string your muscle fibers. You didn't craft your bones. This has nothing to do with your agency. So if a body isn't that, then what is it? Well, to me, it's a technology of nature. You know, bones, collections of minerals. Your blood uses iron from the earth to transport oxygen to your cells. The mechanisms of your brain create a lot of what we consider reality. A lot of the mechanisms that are allowing us to communicate in this way. So if the body is nature, nature in the way that an oak leaf is nature, nature in the way that an owl flying through the twilight is nature, the fact that we can move it at all is amazing. I mean, this collection of matter, this representation of nature, that it is connected to our thinking minds is fascinating to me. So when I think of my hand, if I think of it as an object of nature, then suddenly that mental space is a space I want to explore. You know, if we're thinking about exercise as intentional movement, we can think about it as a way to celebrate the mind-body connection, which in turn can be a celebration of the mind-nature connection. So that, to me, is a much healthier approach when I start to think about why exercise. What is exercise? I don't care about being hardcore. I don't care about being tough. I do care about thinking about the ways and exploring the ways that my conscious mind can connect to physical nature. That is something I'm interested in. Moving from there to, in my journey toward my kind of fitness, thinking about exercise, I came to the realization that it was easier for me to think about movement, not exercise. Just to give you one arbitrary example from my experience, you know, I could get hung up on the idea that I need to do push-ups, for example. Just kind of a typical exercise. Well, when I restarted putting physical and mental effort into discovering what fitness is for me, I couldn't get down on the floor and do push-ups, you know, not very many. And shrugging off the idea that I needed to do push-ups because that was an exercise and that's what exercise is, and instead changing to pushing, this motion, helped to unlock for me an interest in movement, an interest in exercise. So, for example, you know, if you can do this motion and you want to explore it, if you want to challenge yourself with it, but you're not going to get on the floor and do push-ups, you could do things like simply lean your chest against a wall, plant your hands on it, and push away. And for your own unique body, you can feel what it's doing to execute that movement. You can feel how your chest is working. You can feel how your arms are working. And then if you want to challenge yourself, you can, I don't know, do 50. Take a break. Try to do more. It's completely individual. Everyone will be different. But what it isn't is some sort of prepackaged path sold to you by an Instagram fitness influencer. It's not that. It's not that. I mean, what could possibly be more intimate, unique, or individual than your own connection between your mind and your body? Those things are infinitely unique and personal. What I want, though, is to invite people into that space that through various cultural, marketing, superficial markers have been told that that space isn't for them. Another thing that on my journey I have found is the mantra consistency, not intensity. So if you hurt yourself, if I hurt myself, if I do exercises to the point where, my muscles hurt badly, I won't want to do it again. And yet it is physiological science that if you exercise moderately to where you're not sore, you will still progress. You'll still change your body. And, definitely speaking from a place of privilege here where I am not in pain as my default. But that's part of the personal journey of speaking to your body and learning its language, right? But what I want to put forth is that intensity is what is often sold in the mainstream sort of exercise culture. And that doesn't need to be what exercise is. And I would say consistency is as or more powerful than intensity. Same is true with my writing projects. Finishing a novel, writing poetry. And finishing a novel, National Novel Writing Month, I'll give you an example, works for some people. They find it inspirational and motivating. I find it overwhelming and smothering. I can't write that much in a day. And being told to try to write that much in a day tends to make me shut down and not write at all. What I can do is say, I've done this a couple different ways. I've said, I have to live with this book for 20 minutes a day. I'm going to sit and live with the text on the page for 20 minutes a day as a personal goal. That's something I can do. Word goals in the neighborhood of 500 words a day I can do. But there again, the thing that works for me tends to be to think of consistency, not intensity. The other thing that works for me is something I think of as making the ritual tangible. So I think of exercise when I think of it in the context of, as I said, exploring kind of a mind connection to nature as something of a ritual. Making it tangible, in my case, involves writing it down. So I just have a piece of blank printer paper taped up next to my bedroom door. And just about every day I write down the date and I circle it. And then I use that to catalog anything I have done for my fitness on that day. That is the piece of paper where I document my fitness journey. And how that helps me push back against other challenges like perfectionism is that when I inevitably have a day where I am too tired or too depressed or too sore or too distracted or 100 other things to do what my plan was for that day, well, that day doesn't exist in isolation. I don't despair over that day because what I see is a piece of paper where I am documenting a journey, not a destination, right? If the day is the destination, the day is not the point. The consistency over time is the point. The making the ritual tangible. So, again, totally subjective. I'm sharing personal things that have worked for me. One subjective person with my own unique challenges and characteristics. But I share them in service of, I hope, the greater purpose of reminding you that the images and ideas of mainstream exercise culture, the prescriptive ideas, the exclusionary ideas, aren't the actual definition of what fitness is. Subjective fitness for you. Exercise for you. People love to make capital T truth because they feel like they have discovered something unassailable. So often people make the thinking mistake of discovering something that works for them really well in their life and wanting it to be objective so that it's not their truth, it's capital T truth. And if you don't share it, it's a flaw with you. To me, that is self-evidently not the case. So I hope you can find ways to explore your own fitness, to define your own fitness in the way we define our own meaning. And I hope you can come to it with a real sense of love and respect for yourself, and a real sense of love and respect for the idea that it is a deeply personal and subjective journey, and that nothing can exclude you from it. Not an idealized image of what a body is, not strange cultural trappings of a certain level of aggressiveness you need to bring to the endeavor. None of that. In this day and age, there is so much information. I know a lot of folks feel like the information gap to even begin, the catalyst, the startup cost to even thinking about exercise is so high, which is one reason I offered my pushing example. But that's just one arbitrary example. There is endless ways to approach how to explore your relationship with your own unique body, your own unique abilities. Endless ways. One I personally like as someone who does calisthenics, body weight movements, is a YouTube channel called Hybrid Calisthenics, hosted by a guy named Hampton. He just strikes me as very positive. And he will walk through a whole bunch of different progressions of easy to difficult movements, fundamental movements of pushing or pulling or legs. He just has a good variety. So that's one recommendation. But there are endless options out there. So I hope this was helpful. Sometimes when I've reached what feels like an epiphany for me, in terms of surmounting something that has been a hurdle for me, I like to share it. I like to share it in the humble hopes that what I have discovered might help someone listening. So that is the spirit in which I'm offering these thoughts. I hope you are well.